Hello, good morning, and welcome. Welcome to another episode of Psyched. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, a counseling psychologist by profession. Of course, you already know that. And I welcome you, for those of you who continuously watch the program. Today we have a sobering one, a continuance of a conversation that we started already. But today's program is even more so somber because we feel as though, a lot of us, as though we are in uncharted waters when it comes to the increase in murders and deaths in Trinidad and Tobago and crime. We seem to be wanting to reach record numbers. Before I get into today's program in full effect, we discuss the traumas that can fall out of invasion into your personal space, especially for children and young adults. Let's take a look at this video that has been circulating, and then we can have a conversation about it with today's guest.
Be quiet, children. Shh. Down. Shh. Be quiet, children. The other side is answering back. Shh. Shut down. Down. Oh gosh, down, children. Down. Down. Shh. Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Shh! Shh! Oh my God! Children, be down! Shh! Shh! Children, just be quiet. Just be quiet.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices, like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola.
Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
We delve into the exciting world of neurology.
The brain is an electrical organ. If the brain doesn't get enough blood with food and oxygen to it, it's not able to supply the electricity to the rest of the body. If that happens for a prolonged period enough time where the brain stops getting blood, part of the brain dies. Essentially, that's a stroke.
Hey guys, I'm getting a little nostalgic here, sitting on the blocks at the pool. Today we're going to talk a little bit about swimming. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Hello and welcome back to Psyched. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph. As I mentioned previously, today's program is a sober and sombering one. We intend to have a conversation about trauma invading safe spaces. What do we do when that happens? How do we know that perhaps we are traumatized by having our safe space invaded? Whether that safe space be a school, much like the video we just witnessed, where several children would have been hearing rapid gunfire not too far from the compound, and clearly the person recording the information, the video, seemed to be significantly impacted upon by the incident, and so too the children. Joining me again this morning to have this conversation is no stranger to the program, somebody we had previously who did an excellent job, made us fall almost in love with the TTPS again, is Ms. Aisha Pierce Corby. Ms. Corby, or Aisha?
Aisha is fine. Good morning. Good morning, Sule, and thank you very much for having me again, and thank you very much, of course, to the Office of the Commissioner for allowing us to share these opportunities as to what the TTPS does for crime victims.
Excellent. Okay, so let's first start with this video that has gone viral of some school children laying on the ground while hearing gunshots outside of the school. I understand that we may see this video, and you at home, you may have watched the video, and you may have felt a tinge, or you may have felt annoyed or angry. But beyond that anger, and I understand it totally, for those parents who may have had children who are involved, or parents who may have children in other schools that may have endured something very similar, what can this impact, can the children be traumatized?
Well, first of all, it's a very tragic viewing that the country would have been exposed to recently, and I know the information regarding the video is still being revealed, so there's a lot that may not be known, but certainly it's a situation where children would have been exposed and at risk and exposed to trauma. So definitely children can be traumatized by these situations, and these levels of trauma can take varying degrees and can be seen, of course, in their behavior, impacting school performance. You may have children presenting issues such as sleep disturbance, or may have difficulty eating, and even relating with their peers within coming days. What we want to be very mindful of is where these things happen over time, where they're at risk of possibly becoming desensitized or to this situation becoming a norm. But certainly it's something that we really would not want our children to be exposed to quite frequently. And we also would not want to communicate to the children that this is okay, that this is normal operations, right? But certainly we want to provide some avenues for children to cope and navigate their feelings as they respond to these things. And to let them know that it's okay if they feel afraid, it's okay if they are uncomfortable, and let's process that. Let's see how we can help you deal with that.
So then, what is the possibility? Because I know some of us may say, my child just does not like to go to school. They look for every possible reason why they shouldn't go to school, and they're not feeling well, and there's always a reason. And you psychologists like to give a fancy term to every single thing. Everything is a disorder and a special whatever. But there is something that we call a school refusal. There is school refusal, and could this possibly, having children in a safe space, because school is a safe space, much like your home, in a safe space, can that impact upon them and their willingness to want to go back into a school environment?
I think wherever a space has presented situations of risk and things that may be unsafe persons such as children can refuse to want to go back. Similarly, like if the child is being bullied, or if the child is experiencing other types of risk in the school, they may refuse. Or if someone is hurting the child at the school, if the child is being some possible form of interference or some sort of grooming may be happening, those things can also relate to a child wanting to refuse or refusing to go to school.
Right.
So definitely this situation where there's the sound of gunfire in the neighborhood can cause that level of discomfort.
Right. And just to remind viewers at home, remember we've spoken about trauma several times, and we've said that basically trauma is either too much too soon for the brain or the body to handle, or too little or too much over a long period for your body and your brain to handle. Just layman, in a layman explanation.
And I think I like that you reiterated that in terms of too much, too soon for the brain to handle. Yeah. And that precisely oftentimes happens with children. It's too soon developmentally for their stage to really navigate and interpret this in a healthy manner as to what is, and to differentiate or distinguish that this is not right or this is not acceptable. Sometimes they may not have reached that level of development as yet.
So I want to bring this and tie it back also into potentially being, because at this time where things are difficult, I understand those who are criminally minded might feel as though they have more motivation to go out and be more brazen with some of their attempts, because things are difficult. It's a difficult time, transition out of COVID and so on. You're hearing a lot of stories on the news of persons now experiencing home invasions. And having children at home as well. So your child might be at home, you might be at home, and persons now break into your home with firearms, of course, at this time, and they rob you, tie up the child, and so on, tie you up. Is that also a traumatic event? Because this is also a safe space. Just like your school is a safe space, your home is a space where you're supposed to feel safe.
Right.
So what happens when that space is invaded? Either in school by gunfire or at home with somebody breaking in and robbing you, either when you're present or not? Talk to us about that. What can happen?
I mean, it's indeed, it's certainly a traumatic incident, especially because your home, as has been said before, it's maybe a sanctuary, it's a place where you get your center, your peace, and when that is invaded, that whole sense of loss of control in this space. And then there's the dynamics of if the offense is committed by a stranger or someone known, if weapons were used, and also if you were injured or wounded in the incident. Because one or more of those things may occur.
Right.
And
so you have trauma on top of trauma then?
Right. Yeah. So sometimes you may see things with home invasions where persons may be familiar. It may be a person that you may have hired to do some work around the home and may have entered the home at a time that you're not there because they're familiar with the property and those things like that. So that may cause a whole level of concern on the individual and the victim themselves, that whole level of fear, uncertainty, guilt. I probably should have known better, I could have made a different decision. But then you have those types of home invasions where it's unknown. And it may be with a weapon, and it may also be an injury involved. Right. And the loss that occurs there, especially if it's done in the presence of a child or children witnessing that. Oftentimes we've seen families that it takes a long time for them to come to terms with what has happened, far less to start to cope and navigate as to what happens next. And I think that's why the services of the Victim and Witness Support Unit is so key, to really help the person at that early stage to navigate and to see where they can get help and to normalize or to let them know that the feelings that you're experiencing are very normal for this type of event. Right? The feelings of fear, uncertainty, guilt, shock, denial. And persons may also be very concerned as to whether it is, what should I do next? In terms of they may be very uncomfortable in their space. They may want to move to live to somewhere else because this space is no longer safe. So how do I regain that sense of it being a sanctuary again?
I was aware, I had a friend who was brought to Trinidad to employed in a position. I don't know if you'd call that an expat, but they were employed in a position here in Trinidad. And on their way home to St. Augustine, while waiting for the gate to open or opening the gate, they were held up at gunpoint. Relieved of the vehicle and numerous other items and so on. And then the person didn't feel safe in Trinidad anymore.
Okay.
You know, they just had difficulty sleeping, which I had to explain was quite normal. That's part of it. You need to perhaps do things to make yourself feel safe again. So while I'm talking about that, I want to ask you, what can persons do if these things happen? What can they do to feel safe again?
And it's first of all, it's important for them to express in terms of how they feel, to get some help to cope with that mentally, right? And emotionally to cope with that. Persons also are encouraged in terms of how they can secure their properties, in terms of whether it be surveillance cameras or whether it be different neighborhood watch groups in the community, whether it be different arrangements they decide within the home. Sometimes we've seen with victims, though, it's uncomfortable for them to return to the home very soon after. So sometimes they may decide to stay by a relative or a friend until they are able to recover or stabilize themselves emotionally and then return to the home. Of course, we would want persons to see how they can also go ahead with the police investigation, to certainly make a police report and see how they can go through straight to the end with it. And the persons can also benefit from what is called criminal injuries compensation when these things are reported, where they can apply for some level of compensation to deal with to some extent, where they can apply. It's not an entitlement, but they can explore that avenue through the state, where they can access support for counseling expenses, loss of wages, and those items, not the items that were taken, but medical expenses that may have been incurred out of the incident, right? Through criminal injuries. And this is where victim and witness support comes in, where we would provide that information as to how they can do it, right?
So before we go too much further, all right, I was just, or my child perhaps was involved in an incident, perhaps my child was, has just witnessed a shooting, or my child is in school and there was a shooting outside of the school and they're traumatized, or we were at home and in an area that we consider to be a safe space, and something like this has occurred, and you know, my child is traumatized. I am perhaps a bit traumatized as well. I call the police to make a report. Is that the first thing I do? And then what happens? How do we get help from you after that?
Right.
So we call the police to make a report about the incident after we catch ourselves.
Okay.
Right. We gather things, I suppose. Thank God that we're all alive. And then we call the police. We make a police report. Right. Let's hope the police have a working vehicle. So we call the police, make a police report. What next? How do we get all of this assistance from you and get all this information that we don't have?
Right. So the victim and witness support unit will certainly be engaged by the investigating officer. So they refer you to us, and then we make contact with you. All right.
Can persons ask for?
Sorry?
Can persons ask for or request?
Yes, they can ask, and because of opportunities like this, they can also call directly and say, you know, listen, this has happened to me and I think I need some help to cope. I need some help to deal with it. So we then get in contact with you. We can do a home visit. We can also invite you to come in, where we begin to assess as to where you are, how your functioning has been affected, and what are your needs. So we look in terms of your emotional needs, how we could chart a course to provide some support and counseling to deal with that. And then we look at, in terms of helping you understand what next. What next would be maybe a statement. What next it would have most likely visiting of the scene, if it would have happened at your home, in terms of the policing aspect of it. What next in terms of if you have to get medical treatment, helping you to navigate those things. There may be loss of job activities in the coming days. So in terms of just giving you those areas of support to navigate what is going to be happening next for you. And then also now helping you to cope with the days ahead. Is the child going to return to school? What type of behaviors you can look for with the child? What you can do to help to treat with those behaviors? How the child may experience it through play, so they may regurgitate the incident through play, how you manage that. And sometimes the child may regurgitate it in more aggressive or behaviors with their peers, and so how you navigate that. Right. And then you have children that may revert. Children may revert, they may have increased bedwetting and those types of reverting behaviors. So really being mindful of that and allowing you to now cushion the child, and we would also provide that cushioning to help you cope with the days ahead as to how you navigate and how do you regain some sense of renewed comfort in your home, in this space. Right? Of course, providing some avenues as to how you can strengthen the safety aspects of it and reduce possible risk of vulnerabilities going forward. Not that it's your fault, but in terms of what can be done to reduce the chances of this happening in the future. Right. Yeah, but home invasions sometimes take a lasting effect because you can't just, it's not like a piece of jewelry or something that you can just simply replace. Right? Someone comes to your home, you can't just go and say, okay, let me go live somewhere else.
Worse if it's an assault on your person. So if your person gets injured, or there's sexual assault, for example, those things in your home, those things leave a really long impression, you know what I mean? An indelible mark in the mind, and really there's definitely need for therapeutic assistance and guidance subsequent to something that serious occurring.
Definitely, and what we want persons to know is that help is available out there, and we want persons to avoid trying to navigate those type of intense feelings on their own, because sometimes it can lead to a lot more restrictive behaviors in how they're able to function at work, how they're able to continue having just healthy relationships on the whole. These things can then impact, and then you have triggers where it may just resurface later down in life, and you realize, well, what is happening with you? And then there was a robbery at my home, I was assaulted, and I really didn't talk to anyone or to get help to deal with it, right? So it's really, really very helpful for persons to seek assistance, whether it be by a psychologist or whether it be through the Victim and Witness Support Unit initially, to get some sort of guidance as to what is happening and where I can get help.
Well, I like that you threw me in there at some point, so it's not that you plan to take all of my clients out there, but thank you very much for that part of it. But I like that persons can have access, and they can have access. How can they access? I know you said that they can reach out to you all through the TTPS, to the investigative officer, or they can reach out directly, but how do they do that? Is there a contact, an email, or?
Certainly. So the contact number is 612-2577, 612-2577. Correct. And they can email us at vwsu@ttps.gov.tt. That's vwsu@ttps.gov.tt. They can also, sometimes you have persons, like agencies, refer individuals that they know. Like an NGO or a company may say, well, I know someone who has been affected by a crime. So persons can refer a relative or so, or if your relative is not ready to get help, we can also provide some guidance as to how you can support that person in the interim.
Is there an age limit to persons who can access this service?
No, the state has this service that is available. It's free. There's no age limit, adults, minors that are affected by crimes. And we see a lot in terms of home invasions. Persons that tend to be great at risk are elderly, homes that are led by elderly, or female-led homes as well. In some instances, in terms of those that have been seeking assistance through Victim and Witness Support Unit. So I think those are some things that persons want to be mindful of, especially coming with the Christmas season at hand, where persons may be doing a lot of work around the home, and they may be hiring different persons. So they may want to be very aware as to who they select to do work on their homes and how much of the home those individuals get familiar with. Correct. Right? Because persons would obviously monitor your movements when the home is is more accessible for it to be burglarized.
Well, I don't have any gifts at home. I didn't buy any gifts. I have no food. Please, nobody come and try to burglarize by me. I have nothing, right? But not just making light there. What advice would you leave persons with? I know this is a sobering topic. I know when we're talking about child trauma, I'm talking about adult trauma. Invasion is in your space where you feel comfortable, whether it be in school or your workplace or your home. It's always an uncomfortable topic and thing to think about. But what advice, what would you leave with persons? Maybe one or two things that you want to stay with them in their mind, that if they finish watching this program, something to stick with in their heads. What would you say?
First of all, after a traumatic incident, it is okay if you don't feel well. And it's okay if you're not yourself and you're not able to function. I think it's key to really recognize if I am not well, so that you can seek some sort of assistance or begin to even take steps on your own to address that. I think that is key. And certainly to see how we can also support other persons. So even whether it be school officials, employers, family members, see how we can support other persons that may be impacted by these situations and not really give it that tight time frame that, okay, you need to be over by now, or why are you reacting that way? But really see how we could...
Are you still upset, or are you still bothered? Or?
Yes. Yeah, and as a society, how we could really begin to respond to trauma in a more helpful manner so that persons can process it.
Yes.
Because what we have out there are persons that may misplace their trauma or may process it in unhealthy methods and perpetuate aggression and criminal behavior.
Yeah. That was heavy, boy. Yeah, I agree with that 110%. I think we have a culture where we tell people, you still studying that? You still learning that, but are you? You know, and we don't allow people to through their trauma. So I think to summarize what Aisha was saying, go through what you have to go through. Go through the process. Don't try to shortcut the process. Go through it, right? And if you recognize also that you need assistance, and there's the victim and support unit that you can reach out to for free. There's free therapy that you're being offered for any age. And that number again that you can reach out to is
612-2577, and you get a safe space, an emotionally safe space. It's confidential care to victims that are affected by any type of crime.
All right. So, Scobie, thank you very much for joining us today. It sounds like you all have a mountainous amount of work ahead of you because crime has been going up and up. And so, thank you very much for the work that you continue to do. Unsung heroes, you all are definitely unsung heroes, so thank you very much for that.
We continue. I think for this year we've provided support to about 2,800 crime victims, so we continue providing the service through the Trans-Tobago Police Service.
Well, thank you all very much. And for those viewers at home, for those of you who were watching the program and felt triggered by anything that was said, please feel free to reach out to Victim Support Unit. Feel free to reach out to me on social media or WESN family. Please remember you are not alone. You don't have to suffer alone. Please reach out to someone. And until next week, please go at the same time, same place. Stay psyched.
WESN.